And hello everybody and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. It is our second podcast of the week. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back. There is a big podcast, the Summer Movie Preview Season Podcast. That then make it the Summer Movie Season Preview Podcast. There you go. I don't know why it sounded weird the last time I said it. But that's up there if you want to go watch. It's a long one. Of course, me and a couple buddies got together. We ran down all the movies coming out this summer. So that's up there if you want to give that a listen. I'd appreciate it. But yeah, that's up there. So before we get to the news and the trailers, there's a lot of trailers dropped this week, by the way. And the mini review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I just wanted to say, last week, I didn't even realize this until I uploaded the podcast. We just hit 50 episodes. This is 51 episodes of the podcast. It's crazy. I didn't even realize it. It's so crazy. Obviously, there is more than 51 podcasts, but the episodic podcast, I guess if you want to put it that way, this is 51. We just did 50th yesterday, or last week, not yesterday. That's big. I never knew that I would even get to this point. Still learning a lot of stuff. I'm still trying to get better and trying to do some interesting, well, not too interesting, but just trying to do more stuff with the podcast because I like doing this. And I want to keep doing it for a little while longer. So yeah. So 50 episodes. That's crazy to me, really, because I didn't think that. First of all, I didn't even think that I would ever do a podcast, and then to make it to more at this point now more than 50. That's pretty crazy in my mind. So if you have been listening from the very beginning, or you're just starting to listen, I want to thank you for tuning in to my disorganized, sometimes just blabbing, endlessly podcast of mine. So thank you very much for that. All right, so let's move on to this to the podcast. Let's move on to the movie news items that came out this week. Obviously, we will be talking about a lot of the news items that came out this week. Kind of a light week-ish, a little bit. Really, the focus this week was on the trailers. And of course, we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Of course, we're going to talk about, as always, the big news items that came out over the weekend, aka after the podcast went up last week. The first news item, really the only news item that came out last week, was that Seth Rogen and the Lonely Island's next film is oddly connected to something that really happened last week. A festival gone wrong. So it's funny, sometimes life imitates art and sometimes vice versa. But if you've been paying attention to the news, this was everywhere. This was on the world news. Couldn't believe it. But there was a festival, the Fire Festival, Fire with a Y, by the way, instead of the I, from tech entrepreneur Billy McFarland and hip hop rap artist Ja Rule. Yes, Ja Rule, who no one has heard of since the 90s. They did Fire Festival, which was promised to be this luxurious festival where you get amazing rooms and amazing food that was done by 5-star chefs, and there was going to be this epic lineup of artists. It didn't happen because a lot of artists and bands pulled out. The main chef, I guess, pulled out last minute, and instead of these gourmet 5-star Michelin star food, the people got just regular old sandwiches, and instead of luxurious hotel rooms with great views of the ocean and everything else, they had to stay in tents that looked like disaster relief tents. So it was an utter failure. Yes, I said utter like now 4 times. But apparently, when news broke out of all this, Seth Rogen went to Twitter and said this, saying, quote, "This seems like a good time to mention that the movie we are making with The Lonely Island about a music festival that goes horribly wrong." And of course, the Lonely Island's Twitter account, which, by the way, Lonely Island, if you don't know, consists of Andy Samberg, Akiva Scoffer, I didn't say his last name, and Jormar Tacone. Also, that's how I believe you say his last name. They did like Pop Star Never Stop Stopping, and they do like all like a lot of stuff online, and they also did what did they do? They did a movie together. I forgot, Hot Rod, I think that's what it was called. But they're this, of course, this big comedy group. They went on Twitter too and said, "For real, thinking of suing Fire Festival for stealing our idea." Now, there's no timetable for this movie. I don't even think I didn't even know they were working on a movie together about a film festival gone wrong, or just a movie in general. So this kind of came out of nowhere, and people were like, "Huh, this is all right, I guess." What were they? Were they already thinking about that, or was the Fire Festival gone wrong? The inspiration for it, who knows? But there you go. That's someone was going to do something about a music festival gone wrong, and it only seemed appropriate that Seth Rogen and the Lonely Island would probably be the ones that do that first. But there you go. All right, so that was only the news item that came out last week. This is usually the part where I talk about trailer talk, but I think I'm going to save that for the end of the podcast. So just get right to the movie news items that came out this week, because the trailers were kind of really the big highlight of the week anyway. So we'll save that toward the end, kind of like our original little structure. But so let's go to this week's news items. First of all, Matthew Vaughn has apparently already has a Kingsman 3 idea in the works. Of course, people are waiting for Kingsman: The Golden Circle, which opens later this year in September. But writer-director Matthew Vaughn is already planning ahead. Speaking at a London event for the studio, 20th Century Fox, he showed off some footage of Kingsman: The Golden Circle, which was very well received, by the way. And while speaking there, he revealed that there are already plans for a third one, saying, quote, "Weirdly, while we were writing Kingsman 2, we were thinking of Kingsman 3 as well, which is odd. We've got a big idea for that. This is sort of the bridge, and if we can pull this off, we'll make another one." He admitted that while making the first film, Kingsman: The Secret Service, there was no plans to make a sequel, but Matthew Vaughn came up with an idea worth doing and pursued it, and now we have Kingsman: The Golden Circle. He also teased that Eggsy, played by Taron Egerton in the film, the lead, could end up somewhere we don't expect him to be by the end of the film, which would essentially, kick off the third film. Like you said, it'd be a bridge. So everyone was surprised by Kingsman: The Secret Service, everyone that saw it anyway, and then saw it afterwards on DVD or wherever. I was a huge fan of it. I didn't know what to expect. I thought it would probably just be a cool little action film, and it ended up being that, but it ended up being a lot more than that as well. And I'm really looking forward toward Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I thought the teaser they released was it was okay. I didn't completely fall in love with it, but I kind of felt that way, the same way about Kingsman: The Secret Service. So my anticipation built up for the first film. I think that's kind of how I will go for this one as well. But I'm still gonna go watch it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still gonna go watch it. And hearing that they already have a third one in mind is pretty cool. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Let's move on to some video game movie news. Gears of War is back from the dead, as it just got a new writer. So, Gears of War has been in development for a very, very, very long time. Almost 10 years now, basically. For those of you guys who aren't familiar with Gears of War, the games are, it's a third-person shooter game set in the future on a different planet. And it follows a group of soldiers in Delta Squad, led by Marcus Phoenix. At least in the first, I think it's the first 3 games. I think there is a new one. I don't know if he's the lead. No, first 2 games, and then I think the third one, he's replaced by someone else. But they are the last pretty much ditch effort to save humanity on the planet from the villains of the game called the Locust Horde. It's a pretty cool game. I've played the first two, and they're really cool. I mean, obviously, if you're a fan of shooter games, you're gonna want it. But again, this has been in development for at least over 10 years, or close to 10 years. I remember when they first said they were going to do it, and then nothing ever came from it. So it's one of those projects that's just kind of been bouncing in and out through Hollywood. But Universal Studios is the company that has the distribution rights at the moment, and they have just hired a new writer in Shane Serrano, who will write the script with Dylan Clark set to produce. Dylan Clark recently produced Patriots Day, so they have a good producer on hand for that. As for Serrano, he's written a few scripts like Oliver Stone's Savages, which was by the way, if you didn't catch that, it was Michael Bay's Armageddon, which is probably one of Michael Bay's better films. The 2000 film Shaft, I believe that was one of the Ving Rhames, and the very terrible Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, which was part 2, aka the darkest film of all time, not because of its dark tone, but because you couldn't see anything. And he will also work on the Avatar sequels, for script-wise. So there's that. And back in October, when the film started picking up more steam, and once Universal picked up the rights, the co-creator of the games, Rod Ferguson, said this interesting quote about the games and potentially the film, which I tend to agree with, and this is something that we'll get into after I read the quote, saying, quote, I think you have to let the movies be the movies. They're two different mediums and two different audiences in some cases. And I think some video game movies in the past have failed because they tried to make a movie for gamers. If you have this great IP with a deep backstory and lots of lore that you can make interesting stories out of, it's great. But if you just go after the gaming audience, then it isn't going to be a successful movie, which is true. So that said, and that's kind of true. Look, I don't think since we've started the podcast, we haven't had a lot of video game movies, a lot of video game movies come out except for Warcraft, and Warcraft wasn't all that great, because Warcraft is such a unique brand in itself, and there's fans for that. And if you don't know anything about Warcraft, or even a little bit about fantasy or stuff like that, you're going to be a little lost. With all these other video game movies, and this is something that I do agree with, and there's a reason why I agree with his statement, and I've said, not on the podcast, because again, we haven't talked too much about video game movies. Studios have to understand that that making a movie about a video game is different, because if you try too hard to please the video gamers, you're alienating people that don't know anything about the video games, and you're alienating people that maybe just saw the poster or just saw the trailers or saw that someone they really like is in the film. That's why they're going to go watch it. So if you alienate those people, you're going to lose them, and they're just going to lose interest in the film. And word of mouth is everything for films like this, for any film, but especially for video game films, because people already have a preconceived notion that video game movies suck. And it's hard to argue that, because some of them do. And again, it's because sometimes studios will be like, well, we want to bring as much as the video game into the film as much as possible, and then you lose that audience. But if you bring too much in and it doesn't make sense, especially to the video gamers, then you're just gonna lose both sides, and it's not the way to go. And this kind of goes a little bit with my remake argument in terms of, if you're going to remake something, try to do something that's different. Try to make it your own, but try to make it your own in the way that makes sense, and that is respectful to the original, but also really kind of telling your audience, hey, we're doing our own thing in the best way possible, and do it, and of course, make it good. Don't be like, oh, we're gonna do our own thing. We're gonna take this little part, but we're gonna make it our own thing, and then it's not good and it's terrible. Then yeah, you're gonna have a crappy movie. But if you do that, if you do it right, and you take something and you try to make it your own thing, but at least pay respect to what was done before, then I think you're in the good. I think you're in the clear, at least for me. But Gears of War, yeah. I mean, just the concept of that Gears of War is back in the news cycle, and just the concept of just having to wait to see how long this gets made. I don't know. I don't know if I can do it again. So I won't get my hopes up too much, because obviously, 10 years. That's when this project was first announced, and now it's going back. So hopefully, Solano can crack the code of making a Gears of War game, or a Gears of War movie. I'm sorry. So sticking with video game movies, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's led Rampage movie gets an official synopsis. Now, of course, we all know Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, one of the hardest working men in Hollywood, is also sometimes his own PR person on social media. Because Johnson over the weekend gave fans just a little bit of a tease of what Rampage, a movie he's making, which is based off a video game, could be about. But Warner Brothers, of course, saw that and they one-upped him a little bit. Of course, they can't one-up The Rock, but they gave more details of Rampage by releasing a synopsis for the film, and also releasing the full cast, at least of course the cast that will have big roles. Brad Payton will come back or not come back. He is directing. When I meant to say that, got a little ahead of myself. He's coming back to work with The Rock. They've worked together before on San Andreas and Journey 2, so he will direct the film. And he promised earlier on, when the project was first coming together, said the movie's going to be there's going to be a lot of emotion. It's going to be a lot scarier and a lot more real than the video game, whatever that means. So here's the official synopsis for Rampage. Primatologist David Oki, played by Dwayne Johnson, a man who keeps people at a distance, shares an unshakable bond with George, the extraordinary intelligent silverback gorilla who has been in his care since birth. But a rogue genetic experiment gone awry transforms his gentle ape into a raging monster. To make matters worse, it's soon discovered that there are similarly altered alpha predators. As these newly created monsters tear across North America, destroying everything in their path, Oki teams with a discredited genetic engineer to secure an antidote, fighting his way through an ever-changing battlefield, not only to halt a global catastrophe, but to save the fearsome creature that was once his friend. The press release also said that Johnson will be joined by Naomi Harris, Malin Anchorman, Joe Manganiello, Jake Lassie, PJ Byrne, Marley Shelton, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Not only that, the film will use Weta Digital to bring their monsters, the gorilla, an alligator, and a wolf, to life. AKA Weta, by the way, aka the same company that does the Avatar special effects, that does the Planet of the Apes special effects, and also does some touch-ups for a bunch of other films as well, like some Marvel movies. So Weta Digital, of course, awesome job on the things they do. Obviously, if you've seen Planet of the Apes movies, that's kind of how they're going to bring Rampage to life, which seems pretty interesting. Now that I know that Weta is behind the effects of Rampage, I don't know what it is. That kind of just jumped up my not my full anticipation. Rampage is gonna go to like the top of my must-see list. I'll wait to see a trailer, see what's going on with that. But knowing that now, that's okay. Now at least we know we're in for some great effects, and not some cheesy effects that we probably seen before somewhere else. So that's pretty cool. So Rampage is set to be released on April 20th next year. We'll probably be hearing or seeing some more stuff from Rampage probably before the end of the year. The Bad Moms sequel adds some big names. Bad Moms, of course, was a surprise hit of the summer last year. I was even surprised by it when I went to go see it. I really wasn't expecting too much of it, and then it actually was a hell of a lot better than I thought it would be. When the sequel was announced, not too many people were surprised. Now the film, which will be titled Bad Moms Christmas, has added some big names to the cast. According to reports, Cheryl Hines, Christine Baranski, Peter Gallagher, and Susan Sarandon have all joined the cast of the sequel. Mila Kunis, Kristen Bell, and Kathryn Hahn will all return to reprise their roles, as will writers and directors John Lucas and Scott Moore. They will return, of course, again to, like I said, write and direct the film. Early synopsis says the film will see the original characters having their mothers coming to visit for the holidays, hence the title, Bad Moms Christmas. Other than that, we don't know too much about the film, other than they are currently filming in Atlanta. Bad Moms Christmas will arrive in theaters later this year on November 3rd. Let's move on to the next news item. Jeremy Renner is set to play Doc Holliday in a new biopic. So Jeremy Renner stepping back into the leading role spotlight instead of the supporting role spotlight with a new biopic about the legendary Doc Holliday. Reports say that Renner will play John Henry Holliday, aka Doc Holloway, the dentist from Atlanta who turned into a Wild West icon thanks to the shootout at the OK Corral in 1881. The film will be based off two books by Mary Dora Russell in the book Doc and the book Epitaph, a novel of the OK Corral, which chronicles the life and times of Holliday, who stood with Wyatt Earp during the shootout. Renner will now join the long list of people who have brought the icon to life, like Kirk Douglas in the 1957 film Gunfight at the OK Corral, Stacy Keach in the 1971 film Doc, Dennis Quaid in the 1994 film Wyatt Earp, and Val Kilmer, famously, in the 1993 film Tombstone. If you haven't seen Tombstone, I highly recommend you do. I watched Tombstone for the first time in a long time, and that movie was pretty good. I forgot how good it was. If you haven't seen Tombstone, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of famous faces in there you'll recognize if you haven't watched it in a while or have never watched it. So, yeah, Tombstone, watch it. Westerns themselves are pretty hard sells nowadays. It doesn't really matter who you really kind of put in front of it. I don't know. It's just like Westerns aren't dead. It's just they're very, very hard to sell. I mean, they can make money at the box office, but they're not going to make the amount of money that, you know. I hate to do it because I know everyone does it, but like a Marvel movie, they're not going to make Marvel movie money anymore. But I mean, this is pretty cool. Jeremy Renner is a great actor, you know, especially when he's giving the right material. So I can't wait to see what he brings to the table as Doc Holliday. The film is still in the early stages, so we'll have to wait a while for that to come out. But let's move on to the next movie news item. Brian De Palma is set to direct Christina Hendricks and Nikolaj Coster-Waldau. I never know how to say his last name. Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones in the film Domino. So Brian De Palma has found a new film to direct, the international crime thriller Domino. Christina Hendricks from Mad Men and Jaime Lannister, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name again, from Game of Thrones, are set to star in the film. It is expected to start filming sometime this summer from a script by Peter Skavlan, who wrote the film Kon-Tiki. The film will follow a Copenhagen police officer, played by Coster-Waldau. Again, I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, who is seeking justice from his partner's murder by a mysterious man called Irem. He teams up with a fellow cop and his partner's mistress, played by Christina Hendricks, to hunt him down, but are unwittingly caught in a cat-and-mouse chase with a CIA agent that will take them from Scandinavia to the sun-drenched landscapes of Spain. This will be De Palma's first film since the 2012 thriller Passion with Rachel McAdams and Noomi Rapace. If you don't remember that film, I don't blame you. I hardly remember that film. I had to look it up, and then I remember, oh, that's right. I remember watching a trailer for that and never actually seeing the movie. It wasn't well received, so I'm kind of okay. I didn't watch it. However, De Palma has a very storied and strong directing career. I know some of you will probably know his name from Scarface. Obviously, that's the big thing that everyone remembers him for. But he also directed Carrie, the first Mission Impossible film, Femme Fatale, The Untouchables, which everyone also really loves, and he's directing, a bunch of other stuff. So anytime he kind of steps behind the camera, it's most likely gonna be good. So this, and with solid leads and Hendricks and Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones, Domino could end up being a good film. We don't know. We'll see. When everything is still in the early stages, still again, they're aiming to start filming this summer. They don't actually know they're going to start filming this summer, so we'll be ready for that. Melissa McCarthy is set to lead the R-rated puppet comedy The Happytime Murders. That just brings a smile to your face, doesn't it? After years of being in development, the rated R puppet comedy film The Happytime Murders is taking a huge step forward. According to reports, Melissa McCarthy is set to lead the film that is set in Los Angeles' underbelly, where puppets and humans coexist. Two clashing detectives, one human and one puppet, are forced to work together when the former cast of the classic puppet show called The Happytime Gang starts getting murdered one by one. The film was actually this has been in development for a long time. The film was first developed or bought up back in 2008 by a spec script. Again, spec script, those of you guys don't know, is a script that a writer just writes on their own with no help from the studio, no kind of word. Doesn't have a studio attached to it. They kind of just wrote it on their own, hoping to sell it to a studio. So it was the spec script was written by Todd Burge, and the script got picked up by the Jim Henson Company, which is pretty cool. And Brian Henson, the son of Jim Henson, signed on to direct, but the film ended up bouncing from studio to studio, and then ended up eyeing a bunch of actresses. Two of them were Cameron Diaz and Katherine Heigl. But it wasn't until now that they've got Melissa McCarthy set to lead, that the film has found a studio, and XTX Entertainment. They released films like the Matthew McConaughey film Free State of Jones. They just released something. I literally just saw this movie, and I can't remember what the movie was now. Oh my god, what was it? I literally just saw a movie by this company. I can't remember what, but they've released a few stuff here. And the Gift, the movie with Joel Edgerton, Jason Bateman, and Rebecca Hall, they released that as well. They've been releasing a lot of stuff lately, but they will be handling the studio's they will be handling the distribution rights. So McCarthy will also produce the film along with her husband Ben Falcone, and she will also apparently work on the script. The script is now being rewritten by Eric and John Hober, who have written films like the Red Films with Bruce Willis and John Malkovich and Helen Mirren. Those films. They've also written Battleship and the upcoming shark film Meg. So there is that. Production will begin in August, so we can look forward to that. Ridley Scott says that Neil Blomkamp's Alien 5 is no longer happening. So this one hurt a little bit when I read it. It hurt a little bit. If you remember, I'll rewind the clocks back a little bit. 2 years ago, Neil Blomkamp, the director of District 9 and Chappie and Elysium, he had his artwork for Alien released online. It was his own kind of Alien story. It was just artwork that he had done. He didn't do it with a studio in mind, or didn't even do it with a studio or with the idea of actually doing an Alien movie, because he didn't think he'd actually be able to do one. So he just did it, and he released it online. And eventually 20th Century Fox, who of course releases the Alien movies, they got in contact with him, and I guess they heard his pitch and they liked it, and they hired him to direct another Alien film. Now, Ridley Scott, the director, of course, of the first Alien film and the prequel Prometheus, was brought in as producer, And he had already done Prometheus. Prometheus had been released for like a year or almost 2 years at this point. This, by the way, would all happen after Chappie came out. So pretty much what, like 2 years now? Yeah. And the idea of this movie was that Ripley, once again played by Sigourney Weaver, and Hicks, once again played by Michael Biehn, would all come back to the film. And the film would act as a direct sequel to Aliens, which was part 2, ignoring the events of Aliens 3 and Alien Resurrection. And that was it. That was 2 years ago. Nothing. We haven't heard nothing from this movie whatsoever since then. So, of course, with Alien Covenant right around the corner in 2 weeks, Scott is doing interviews, and the question came up, obviously. He was speaking to a French outlet, and he said this. Now, all the translations that I read are a little different, but they all kind of have this. They all really kind of nail down what he said. So here's what he said, saying there was never a script. It was an idea that evolved from, I believe, a 10-page pitch, and I was meant to be part of the producers on that. It didn't involve. Fox decided that they didn't want to do it, and that was that. I'd already done Prometheus, and I was planning Covenant, so I don't know. And when asked if the movie was likely to happen, Scott said, I don't think so. So, we can take this news in 2 different ways, maybe even 3, but I'm going to give you 2. 1, it's a shame, especially considering that Sigourney Weaver herself, who was set to come back and already worked with Blomkamp on Chappie, praised Blomkamp's idea, and it's not every day that a studio looks at artwork online from a director and says, you know what, we're going to hire you to do this. So they're, especially on a brand like Aliens, which of course, is a big brand and people are a huge fan of. 2, Ridley Scott. Now, I'm not going to say anything bad about Ridley Scott. I'm a huge Ridley Scott fan, despite his stinkers in the last handful of years. I'm looking at you, the counselor. But Scott at this point had done Prometheus, and he had moved on to film a bunch of other films, Exodus, Gods and Kings, and The Martian, and everything else. The counselor, which I mentioned. And it wasn't really until Blomkamp had come on board to direct Alien that Scott said, hey, I'm not done with my Alien films yet. And he was like, no, I'm going to do another Alien movie. I'm going to come back and do more. So Fox was like, okay, well, we'll just push back Neil Blomkamp's film until you're done with your with your prequel series of Prometheus. So, and at the time, and I'm not the only one thinking about this, at the time when this was announced, there were a few outlets and a few people within the movie industry that were like, this kind of seems like Ridley Scott's like strong-arming some people and strong-arming Fox a little bit and kind of nudging Neil Blomkamp to the side. I'll say what you want about Neil Blomkamp. District 9 was fantastic. It's you can make the argument that District 9 is one of the best sci-fi films in the last 10, 15 years. Elysium wasn't that great. The concept was good, but the overall execution was a little lacking. And Chappie was a bit disorganized in a lot of areas, but again, not a terrible film. But of course, nowhere near the greatness that was District 9. And there are problems with District 9. I'm not gonna be one of those people that says, I'm not gonna not hear you out on the problems that District 9 has. It does have some problems, but overall, District 9 is the better of his films. But going back to Aliens, I would have loved to see what Blomkamp was gonna do with Aliens, because his artwork on it was phenomenal. If you have not seen Neil Blomkamp's artwork, I'm gonna try to find a site that has all of it and link it down below in the show notes / description area, because that artwork is pretty damn impressive, and I would love to see I would have loved to see all that kind of come together and come to life. Now, when it comes to again, Ridley Scott, and again, I love Ridley Scott. I love his films. I love his filmography. But it does seem like he was just kind of coming in and be like, no, I'm not done. Push this. Settle down, young timer, young gun. I'm not done yet. I'm gonna do my movies first, and then you can have your time in the sandbox afterwards. And I mean, it is Ridley Scott, so we probably have to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit, but the timing of it's so interesting. And now Ridley Scott's saying, no, I got like 4 other films lined up for Alien, and if they're good, then great. Hopefully, I'm very hopeful that Alien Covenant is going to be good. So far, so good. Everything that I've seen is pretty spot on and great, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And also, originally, Alien Covenant was not the name. He was going to call the sequel to Prometheus Paradise. He wasn't going to call it Alien. Originally, he wasn't going to call any of the prequel films Aliens, or have Alien anywhere near it. He was going to call it different titles. So, there's that. But, of course, the biggest thing, it's a bummer that Neil Blomkamp will not be doing his Alien film, because I would have loved to see that. Alright, let's move on to the next news item, the final news item of the week, at least again at the time of this recording. Jordan Peele's next film will be another social thriller, as he likes to put it. That will make more sense when I read his quote. Jordan Peele, of course, made a huge name for himself, at least to those who weren't familiar with his Comedy Central show, Key and Peele, when he directed the both critic and fan praised film Get Out. And if you haven't seen Get Out, highly recommend you do. And the less you know about the film, the better. What made it even more impressive, at least for a studio's sake, the studio's sake and the film was made on a $5 million budget, and it made $172 million at the box office in its initial run, which is very, very impressive. Since then, of course, Peele has been kind of eyed for a lot of studios. Most recently, at least most noteworthy out there, Warner Brothers eyed Jordan Peele to direct the adaptation of Akira. But later on, Peele came out and said he wants to stick to original works. And that's exactly what he is doing. Because according to The Hollywood Reporter, Peele has signed a first-look deal with Universal Pictures, which means they have claim over his next project. And that will be an untitled social thriller that Peele will once again produce, write, and direct. No plot details are known at the moment, but Universal is giving Peele a bigger budget. They are now giving him the budget of $25 million. This goes along with what Peele said while promoting Get Out, and this is where the social thriller part comes in. He said, quote, "While I was developing Get Out, I was simultaneously developing 4 other projects that I call social thrillers. Each one is meant to deal with a different human demon, a different monster that sort of lurks underneath the way that we interact with each other as human beings. So I hope to soon direct another one of these social thrillers. It's not going to be about race, it will be about something else, but it's going to be very cinematic and fun. To come up with different monster for a horror movie, we really need to look no further than the monster that is all of us. Not so much of an individual psycho killer, but the humanity that gets lost between us." End quote. So yeah, I don't want to spoil Get Out. I will say it's very, very good. It is a very slow burn movie, and it's just one of those movies where you just kind of sit back afterwards, and it's like, oh my god, it hits you after you watch it. It's just one of those movies that sticks with you for a while. And I like this idea that he's gonna, stick to more original works, and he's gonna do what he calls social thrillers, which is really cool. And the fact that he's going to be sticking with that, and he's going to have essentially what looks like full reign, because he's going to produce, write, and direct. And that's very rare for someone who is, he's already directed Get Out, but for someone who is pretty much new in Hollywood to have that freedom of producing, writing, and directing, that's pretty rare, and that doesn't happen every day. and for him to get that is very well deserved, because obviously Get Out was something that we didn't know about him, because when you think of Jordan Peele, you just automatically think of Key and Peele, the Comedy Central skit show, the comedy show. And then, everyone saw his name attached to the trailers of this, like, oh, he's doing a horror movie. Oh, it's probably going to be stupid. Nope. It's just, so that's pretty cool. And I can't wait to see what he does with this. So, it looks like everything's still in the early stages. We probably won't be hearing too much about this anytime soon. But, of course, once I hear something, once it's reported, I will let you guys know on the Facebook page or right here on the podcast. And speaking about the Facebook page, might as well do that. Nice little segue there. You like that? You like that? Down below in the description / show notes area, you can go like my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/moviepits. You'll get you'll get the week's biggest news items, which is basically kind of an outline of what we're going to talk about here on the podcast. Of course, I go a little bit more into detail on the podcast, and every now and then there are movie news items that make it on the Facebook page that don't make it on the podcast, and sometimes vice versa, because obviously the timing of me recording the podcast and seeing a news item, I just put it into the podcast outline and then put it up on the Facebook page afterwards. So there is that. But really appreciate it if you go give me a like on the Facebook page. Also, while you're down there, you can go subscribe and like my WordPress account, where I do all my written reviews. I have some stuff, some opinion pieces lined up at the moment. But that's movieswithchris.wordpress.com, movieswithchris.wordpress.com. Written reviews written by me, obviously, and that you'll find reviews every weekend, pretty much, on that. So this weekend will be the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 written review. That will be up there this weekend, so go check that out. I haven't posted it yet, but it will be up this weekend for that. Alright, let's move on to the trailers that dropped this week. Trailer talk. So we have a new trailer for 47 Meters Down. It is a shark film. It's about two sisters who go on, a shark, one of those shark cages, and they go down and something happens. And of course, their cage kind of breaks down, and they end up going, wait for it, you guessed it, 47 meters down in the ocean. And their oxygen is running low, and of course they have to, figure their way out to get back to the surface. So that there is that. A trailer for The Big Sick came out. It is a independent movie. It is the true story of comedian Kumail Nanjiani and his wife Emily V. Gordon, and how they met and how they got past their kind of how do I put it? I don't want to say racial differences, because it wasn't really racial. It's more kind of like it's kind of more about their family. How do I put it? Getting through kind of their differences with their religions and culture and everything. It's a very interesting story, and the fact that it's getting told is pretty cool. Kumail Nanjiani plays himself in the movie, and then Zoe Krazan, I think that's how you say her last name. She's playing Emily in the film, and Ray Morano's in there, Holly Hunter's in there. It looks like a great story, it looks like a great time, and it's been getting some rave reviews on the film festival circuit. So there is that. A new trailer for It Comes at Night has come out. It's a new horror thriller by A24. Joe Edgerton, Riley Keough, Carmen Egigo was in there as well. This thing is moody. It's eerie. It's just something that jumped to the top of my must-see list from the first teaser, pretty much, because this tells a lot more of the story. Sort of, not too much, just enough to kind of pique your interest and just enough to creep you out. But this is great. I can't wait for this, and it's got a great cast. It just looks very, very cool, and the fact that this is coming out kind of around the heart of the summer is pretty interesting too. So It Comes at Night is also up there. A new trailer for Dunkirk is also came out this week. I had the pleasure of watching this on the big screen in front of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This movie continues to look awesome.
The call went out. We have to go to Dunkirk. Ready on the stern line.
What are you doing? You know where we're going.
Into war, George.
I'll be useful, sir.
One of ours. He's on me.
I'm on him.
The ship's about to leave.
Down you go.
They need to send more ships. Every hour the enemy pushes closer. They've activated the civilian boats. Civilians? We need destroyers. Where are we going?
Dunkirk.
I'm not going back.
If we go there, we'll die.
You're weekend sailors, not the bloody Navy.
You should be at home.
There's no hiding from this, son. We have a job to do.
Turn it around!
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender.
Christopher Nolan is just he's awesome. He's a great director and he knows how to cut a trailer together. I just love this trailer. I think this trailer is great. I think the movie's gonna do really, really well. I can't wait to watch this. I think I mentioned this on the summer movie preview podcast that I got to see. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned on the podcast when I saw it last year. I saw about like 5 minutes of the film in front of Rogue One in IMAX, and it's so, the way they just cut if that's the way the movie's gonna be, if that little scene they showed, if that's like the pacing of the movie, or if just that scene in general, it's gonna be really, really good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But the biggest trailer of the week is finally Sony Pictures has released the trailer for the adaptation of Stephen King's The Dark Tower. This trailer is really, really good.
You're a gunslinger, right?
There are no gunslingers. Not anymore.
Why does the man in black want to destroy the tower?
The tower protects both our worlds. If it falls, hell will be unleashed.
He's like the devil, isn't he?
No, he's worse.
You can't stop what's coming. Death always wins.
Your world might be gone, but mine isn't. If you let that tower fall, billions of people die.
Do they have guns and bullets in your world?
You're gonna like Earth a lot.
All right, let's go.
You clawing your way out of the darkness? Did you tell the kid whoever walks with you dies by my hand?
I will kill him for both of us. I do not aim at my hand. He who aims with his hand has forgotten the face of his father. I aim at my eye. I do not shoot with my hand. I shoot with my mind. Jake! I do not kill with my gun. I kill with my heart.
I have been waiting for this movie forever. You want to talk about Gears of War being 10 years? It feels like The Dark Tower is longer. Probably because there were just so many starts, delays, false starts, directors, studios coming in, actors coming in, whatever, what have you. I think that's what it is. It just feels like it's been so long. And I mentioned this on the summer movie preview podcast, but I'm going to mention it again. ever since I started following the movie news cycle, which was around 2005-ish, The Dark Tower was one of those movies that I always read about. It was always one of those movies like, oh, the Dark Tower movie is getting made. Oh, the Dark Tower movie has been delayed. Oh, it's getting made again. Oh, the so-and-so is being eyed up to direct, or so-and-so is eyed up being for the lead, or whatever. And now to finally see it getting made, now to finally see a trailer, now to finally know it's coming out August 4th, by the way. It looks really, really cool. I've read the first story a while ago, so I have to catch up on my Dark Tower history, but as for a trailer, it looks really good. Idris Elba being a badass, check. Matthew McConaughey playing a villain, check. Really great visuals, check. So I mean, it just looks cool. It just looks badass. I mean, honestly, I can't. I know there's a lot of people already divided. I know there's a lot of people divided. I know it because I've seen it. I've seen the divide of fans. Some of them are worried that it's not going to be, true to the source material. Okay, fine. Some people are, again, for whatever. I can't believe this is still something that we bitch about and moan about online. Some people don't like the fact that Idris Elba is playing the main character Roland Chain, because in the books or whatever, apparently he was white, so they don't like the fact that he's been cast as a black man, which is so, I'm sorry, it's fucking stupid. It's 2017. Who gives a shit what color the actor's playing? What the actor's skin color is. Who gives a shit? No one cares. If he does a good job, then it shouldn't matter, especially if it was a white character and now he's being played by someone of color. Finally, unless it's whitewashing, then then people can complain about that if they want. But I'm Idris Elba. He's a great actor, so I don't care. Anyway, check out the trailer if you haven't. It's awesome. So all the trailer links will be down below in the description/show notes area if you want to go check that out. So let's move on to this week's movie releases for the week. Of course, we're going to start off with the limited releases. We have one called Shockwave. When a terrorist who specializes in explosives takes hold of an underground tunnel, he threatens to kill hostages if his demands are not met. It is an Asian film. It stars Andy Lau, where if you're familiar with Asian cinema, Andy Lau should be a name you should recognize. And if you don't, Andy Lau, if you saw The Great Wall, Matt Damon film, speaking about whitewashing earlier, he was the advisor of the characters, of the people within the wall. But he's also been in a bunch of other stuff. So I'm a huge fan of Andy Lau, which is why I'm mentioning this film. But let's move on to the next limited release, which is 3 Generations. After Ray decides to transition from female to male, Ray's mother, Maggie, must come to terms with the decision while tracking down Ray's biological father to get his legal consent. The film stars Elle Fanning playing Ray, Naomi Watts playing the mother, Susan Sarandon, and Tate Donovan. I saw the trailer not too long ago for the first time, and I don't know. It seems. I mean, it doesn't seem like a film I'm rushing out to go watch, but it does. It's covering a subject that is very kind of touchy still at the moment, but it looks like a fine film. It looks like there's going to be some great performances in there. So 3 Generations, if you're interested in watching that. Again, it's getting a limited release, so be aware of that. But finally, moving on to the wide releases, of course, as we all know, the wide release this week is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Don't push this button, because that will set off the bomb immediately and we'll all be dead. Now repeat back what I just said.
I am Groot.
No! No, that's the button that will kill everyone. Try again.
I am Groot.
Mm-hmm.
I am Groot.
Uh-huh.
I'm Groot.
No!
Once again, written and directed by James Gunn, the Guardians continue their team's adventures as they unravel the mystery of Peter Quill's true parentage. Of course, the original cast returns, with the new cast including Elizabeth Debicki playing Aisha, Palm Clementif, I think that's how you say her name, playing Mantis, Sylvester Stallone's in there in the film as well, and Kurt Russell. That's completely different. Kurt Russell is in the film playing Ego, aka Peter Quill's father. I got the privilege of seeing the film last night. I'll get to my review at the end once everything's done, because I might jump into spoiler territory. So a quick little mini non-spoiler review. It's great. It's awesome. The characters are more fleshed out a little bit. The action and the humor is way pumped up. There's some great set pieces and action pieces. Everything's just more bigger. The soundtrack is great. There are some pacing issues, for me anyway. But overall, I thought the film was really great. It's a lot more emotional than the first film. It's a lot more emotional. There's a lot more humor in the film, but it's a lot more emotions. You're gonna feel some stuff in this one. So overall, I really liked it. I had a really good fun time with it. So yeah. And by the way, there are so many Easter eggs and cameos in this thing, just waiting for you to explore. One of them, I was so dumbstruck when one of them popped up that I just didn't know how to react. It's really, really cool. So yeah, there you go. So there's that. So mini review. Personal rating, 4.5 out of 5. Honestly, I had a lot of fun with it. Of course, Baby Groot's gonna steal everyone's hearts because it is Baby Groot, and he's just more awesome in the movie. So yeah, there you go. Mini review of that. All right, so let's move on to this week. Again, if you want to hear me go into full-on spoilers, that will be at the end of this podcast. So let's move on to this week's box office predictions. I was completely wrong. I think anyone who does box office predictions last week probably felt like they wanted to quit their job, because the box office last week was like nothing no one ever expected. So last week, and I made my predictions without looking. I usually make my predictions without looking at reviews and anything like that, because people don't care about reviews. So last week I picked The Circle to be number 1, Fast and the Fate of the Furious at number 2, The Boss Baby number 3, Beauty and the Beast number 4, and Born in China at number 5. I was very wrong, because last week The Fate of the Furious stayed on the top at number 1. How to Be a Latin Lover came in at number 2. A Indian film came in at number 3. I'm going to butcher this. I'm going to completely butcher this. Bahubali? I don't know. I could be saying that wrong. 2, The Conclusion, was number 4. I'm sorry, number 3. Number 4 was The Boss Baby, and number 5 was The Circle. Completely wrong. I think everyone who played the box office prediction game last week was very wrong on that. But yeah, that was the box office last week. But this week, I'm pretty sure everyone's gonna be okay picking Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 at number 1. If you think it's gonna bomb, you are, I'm sorry, a fucking idiot. But Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is going to be number 1 at the box office. It's gonna make a crap ton of money. And everyone who says no is, again, like I just said, an idiot. A lot more stronger, but an idiot. The Fate of the Furious will come in at number 2. How to Be a Latin Lover will probably fall number 3. The Indian movie, I'm not going to pronounce that because I already embarrassed myself once, will probably come in at number 4, just because there's nothing else really coming out this week, and I don't see The Circle staying in the top 5 because it wasn't very good. The Circle, despite having a very strong cast in Emma Watson and Tom Hanks, John Boyega, Karen Gillan's also in there, Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy, she's in there. Despite all that, Tom Hanks has like maybe 10 minutes of screen time, probably less than that. The whole movie just feels just blah. I found myself wandering off a lot of times. It wasn't very good. So I don't see that kind of sticking in the top 5. So, yeah. So my box office picks once again this week. Boss Baby number 5. That was my number 5 pick. So again, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 at number 1, Fate of the Furious at number 2, How to Be a Latin Lover at number 3, The Indian Movie, again, I'm not going to embarrass myself more than once, is going to be number 4, and The Boss Baby at number 5. Those are my box office picks, and that's all I got for you guys. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Obviously, if anything big drops, you can go to the Facebook page. I will keep that updated for you guys as always. And that's all I got for you guys. Hopefully you guys have a safe, fun weekend. Once again, thank you for listening to the podcast. It is the 51st episode. 51st. I still can't believe that. So thank you guys so much for that. And if you've been listening from the very beginning or from the very end, or this is your first podcast ever, I still want to thank you guys so much for that. Also, be sure to go check out the summer movie preview. Oh my god, the summer movie season preview podcast that came out this week as well. Next week, I'm going to be starting to do 2 podcasts. Actually, no, the week after, I should say. Not next week, but the week after. There will be, the review podcasts will be coming again. I did a couple of those when the podcast first started, and they kind of fell off because of time. But now I have some time on my hands, so and it's the summer movie season, so there'll be 2 podcasts a week from now on. One will be a review podcast at the beginning of the week, and of course we'll keep this episodic movie news cycle podcast at the end of the week. So in 2 weeks they'll be doing that. So I'll remind you guys again next week. But that's kind of how it's going to be, at least for pretty much the summer, and hopefully beyond that as well. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Stick around for a little bit. Of course, I'm going to be doing a spoiler-filled review of Guardians of the Galaxy at the moment, so stick around for that if you've already seen the film or just want to hear spoilers, which I highly don't recommend. You shouldn't spoil a movie for yourself, but I will be doing that. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. You guys are awesome, and as always, have a safe, fun weekend, and go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!
Alright, so, are they gone? Are you guys all gone? Alright. So, here's just a very kind of, I didn't write anything down. I'm just gonna go off this by heart. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is, like I just mentioned, if you listen to the whole thing, to the whole podcast, it is good. The characters are more fleshed out in this movie. Especially the supporting character, Yondu. Especially Yondu. This is spoilers, by the way. Spoilers all around. All right, just all around spoilers. Yondu. He's more fleshed out. We get to know more about him. We get to see more stuff with him. We get to find out the fact that he was a slave at one point, a Kree slave at one point, and he broke out and he became a Ravager, and we get to see him basically have a new Finn, which was a great scene with him and Rocket and Baby Groot. Baby Groot was just trying to constantly bring him new stuff, which I thought was awesome. But we get to find out a lot more about him, and his death scene was just so, I don't even know how to put it. It was just so powerful because like I mentioned, this whole movie was all about emotion. This movie is a lot more emotional, and it's about the fathers. It's about, of course, Peter Quill finds his father, but you can make the cliche that his father was always there, and he was in a lot of sense, because sure, Ego was his father, but that question arises, like, I think I don't remember the exact quote Yondu says, like, he might have been your father, but he wasn't your dad, and I just thought that was so powerful, and it was so cool. And the fact that Yondu just takes this complete 180 that we saw from the first film to this film, and even the beginning of this film, we know that he is a different character. We see that he is a different character in this movie, but it never felt like out of place. It always felt right. It didn't feel like, oh, they just completely changed his character like for no reason. Like, no, it made sense. Like his character transition from being the character he was in the first film to this film, it made sense. At least in my eyes, it made sense. So, although I will admit he looked a little bit more blue in this film than the first film, but that may have just been me, or maybe just the screen that I was watching it on. But yeah, I love the arc. I love Yondu's arc in this movie. It was just it's so impactful, especially by the end. It's just really great. Drax gets a lot. His comedy just gets punched up more. His chemistry with Mantis is like, you're beautiful on the inside. Everyone in my theater, every time those two were together, just laughed their asses off, and they should, because those two were great together. Speaking of Mantis, I thought she was great. I thought she's a great new addition to the cast. We have Nebula in this film. She gets a little bit more fleshed out as well. She's not just the crazy, cybernetic arch rival to Gamora. We find out more about her. She wanted a sister. That's all she wanted all along. She just wanted a sister. The bitter rivalry was all, just was created by Thanos for her to get better, and for Gamora to just, become a stronger warrior, and for Nebula to become Gamora's equal. But it essentially kind of killed her every single time that she lost to her. So I thought that was pretty cool that they kind of gave her that little arc they got for her. Of course, the biggest arc and the biggest story that we have here is Peter Quill finding out that Ego, the living planet, is his father. And the twist, which, everyone didn't really know, it's interesting that with all the trailers and with all the TV spots, and, knowing that Kurt Russell was playing Ego and he was playing Peter Quill's father, he wasn't in the promotion he wasn't in the promotional material that much. I mean, yeah, he was in the trailer. There was a few TV spots that I saw that had him in it, but we never really knew, maybe even saw him, in some other stuff. So we didn't. I don't know if maybe I was just being very, just narrow. I was like, okay, maybe he just doesn't have that big of a role in the movie. Maybe he shows up and for whatever reason he has to leave again. That's what I thought. And then, of course, as promotion went on, as time went on, I was like, maybe he has a bigger role that they can't spoil in the trailers. And that was the case, because obviously we find now that Ego is trying to kind of basically, not necessarily maybe destroy the universe, but he is trying to change the universe in his own way. He's trying to, he for all intent and purposes, he is a god. He is an immortal. He's a celestial that, has been alone for all this time. And to see, his plan kind of come true, like he's been, like the fact that he's gone to all these different planets and put a little bit of himself in all these planets so he can become just bigger, and the fact that he was disappointed by what he saw in the world and in the galaxy. It was kind of, it's interesting that they would do that, and I kind of, and to that extent, I kind of wish they would have fleshed it out just a little bit more. But in terms of having that twist of having him be the villain, which some people were kind of speculating that maybe that was the case, which was fine. I mean, and it turned out to be true. But the fact that that he essentially becomes the villain in the movie, and the big one, that he put the brain tumor in Peter Quill's mom, that was pretty big. And that, I think that, we see him become angry when he hears that. And that kind of just changed, like, everything that he was hoping for, everything, like, he finally has a father. Like, when they were playing catch, I thought that it felt a little corny, but at the same time, it's like, well, he was a kid when he left Earth, and he never got the chance to play catch with his dad. I thought that was very sweet. But, the fact that, he saw his mother die, and his mother was the last kind of real family he had left, besides his uncle, of course. That just seeing him being happy that he's back with his family, and then finding out that his father was the one that really killed his mother. That was the thing that just clicked and made him just angry and snapped him out of this delusion that, Gamora pretty much said that he was in. I like that. I thought that was pretty cool. And then their final battle inside his core, I thought that with the Pac-Man, I just thought that was so. First of all, it was a nice callback when he said, when he found that when Peter found out that he would be able to build stuff, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna build a bunch of weird shit," which that was kind of cool. But to see him kind of build a Pac-Man to charge against Ego, that was kind of funny. That was kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I love all the character work in this movie. The character work was great. Again, they fleshed out the characters so well, and everything, and the emotion of this movie is just so much better. We get that final touching scene with Yondu and Peter, and we get the stuff with Nebula and Gamora. Drax, mentions his family a little bit more in this film, and we get to see Mantis kind of feel that a little bit more with their powers, of course. It's pretty cool. I think that was pretty, and seeing, and again, I think Yondu, besides taking Baby Groot aside, Yondu, I think is going to be like one of the biggest highlights, because we get to see, his character-wise, I think Yondu is probably the best character in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, because his change and his arc in this film is so powerful, and it's so great. Get to see him kind of be this broken down kind of character to having a purpose, to being, broken down and stripped of everything, and then getting it back to make the ultimate sacrifice for someone he maybe have thought of as a son. That to me, I think, is the better of. I think that to me is what makes Yondu probably the strongest character of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So I really like that. So again, the humor is really punched up. I mentioned a little bit with the Pac-Man and everything, and some of the Drax's lines. Really great. The humor spot on, awesome. I love the humor. And the first movie, that's what made the first movie so so impactful for a lot of people, was the humor. So the humor here is once again spot on. It's great. The post-credits scenes, there's a few of them. A lot of them were just like these little scenes, and we obviously the later ones get more impactful. We see Aisha in the film. I didn't mention too much of Aisha because it seems like they were like, okay, like I didn't know where a character was going. She's probably one of the lesser, I won't say lesser characters, but she is one of the characters that would have been helpful to be fleshed out more. But they're probably setting her up for the sequel anyway, so I'm okay with that. Especially with their post-credit scene, the fact that she's finally making Adam Warlock, which is, or only Adam as he's referred to in the post-credit scene, which I thought was great. It was awesome. I could tell where all the nerdy fanboys were, because they all kind of went like yes to themselves. That was pretty cool. So we finally get to see Adam, and we've talked about the potential of James Gunn adding Adam Warlock into the future Guardians of the Galaxy film, or just future Marvel films in general. So we talked about that. We get to see a teenage or adolescent Groot in the future, it looks like, which I think is going to be really interesting. But we'll get to see that. And then, of course, there's the big one, which is the Stan Lee post-credit scene, which was very hinted in, which is, of course, an extension of the scene that happens around the midway point of the movie. He's with the Watchers.
Say what?
Which I thought was so cool, and like you can tell where all the and this is the scene that I was talking about earlier. I was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to react, because I was like, oh my god, they actually acknowledged it. And if you pay really close attention to Stan Lee's lines and his dialogue, he's mentioning his other scenes in the film. I forgot what exactly he says, but he's mentioning his previous cameos in the film to them, which I think is really cool. But it doesn't look like he's actually one of them. It looks like he's credited as an informant. So he's not actually one of the Watchers. He's just someone that works for them, which I think is really, really cool, because obviously fans have always speculated that maybe he's one of the Watchers, or that he is the Watcher. Something with an X, and I can't think of the name at the moment, but that's what the main one, the one that looks over Earth, starts with. His name starts with an X. I just can't remember it. I honestly can't. But there's a shot of him, the shot that you see of him in the movie. That it looks, that's who he is. And when I saw that scene, I was like, oh my god, like that's so cool. It's awesome. We finally get to see the Watchers on the big screen. And then later I was thinking about it, I was like, they have given James Gunn the keys to the kingdom. Because if they give him the opportunity to show the Watchers for the first time, and to have a cameo, and to have that Stan Lee scene in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, that says a lot of how much faith they have in James Gunn. And that is so awesome that they allowed him to do that and to pull that scene off. And I thought that was so cool. Of course, it's not going to help the fanboys that, maybe see you, I told you all along. He's not actually one of the Watchers, because otherwise he would be like that. But he would look like them, but he doesn't. He's an informant, at least according to the credits. So I just thought that scene was so cool, and it was a long time coming. And the fact that James Gunn, did I say James Wan earlier? I probably said James Wan earlier. But the fact that they gave James Gunn the opportunity to do that scene and put it in the movie itself, not just the post-credit scene, in the movie itself, I thought was really cool. So yeah, I loved Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought it was great. Like I said, Yondu is probably one of the best characters, and I would have loved to see Yondu in more films, but I thought his character arc in this movie was so good. I really did. I think Michael Rooker did an awesome job with the character of Yondu, and I just thought it was so cool. And speaking of Yondu, obviously, for all you comic book fans out there, of course, Yondu was one of the original Guardians of the Galaxy characters. He was one of the original lineups. There's a post-credit scene. If some of you guys don't know, or some of you guys are confused, Sylvester Stallone's character in the movie, he is supposed to be Starman, or Starhawk, which was one of the original leaders of the Guardians of the Galaxy lineup and characters. And the little group that comes in the end, in the post-credit scene, where they're all together with, by the way, Ving Rhames and Michelle Yeoh in there. I thought that was, first of all, I was kind of thrown back. I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, did he just have enough money? He just pulled in some favors? But apparently, all the characters that we see in that post-credit scene are the original, or at least one of the original characters from the original lineup of Guardians of the Galaxy. So that was a cool little thing for fans to see. Well, of course, if you don't know that, then you're probably as confused as I am. But I kind of got the feeling, like, when they all got together, I was like, is that the original lineup? And it turned out, when I looked up online later that night, that turned out to be the case. It was the original lineup for Guardians of the Galaxy. So that was pretty cool that they got to sneak that in there as well. But yeah, this movie's just it's good. It's great. Is it as good as the first film? I'm gonna leave that up to you guys. It's a completely different film, really, in terms of theme and in terms of scope and everything. But I liked it. I did. I really enjoyed it. I really dug it. I think it's a great film. Obviously, Baby Groot's awesome. I mean, come on, everyone's gonna want a Baby Groot toy. I know I'm gonna want a Baby Groot toy. But yeah, it's really great. Hopefully, you guys get a kick out of it if you go watch it. I'm obviously gonna go watch it this weekend, probably. If you're listening to my podcast, I'm pretty sure you're gonna go watch Guardians of the Galaxy. But yeah, really great, guys. It's really awesome. Like I mentioned, 4.5 out of 5. There are some issues with it. I can admit that. There's some pacing issues. Aisha probably wasn't as fleshed out as she probably should have been. I would have loved to see. I don't know what I would have loved to see a little bit more of Peter and Ego together. There's enough scenes of them together, but I think I would have loved to see a little bit more. I don't know, maybe a little bit more pushback, a little bit from Peter, but maybe that's just me. But yeah, I loved it. It's great. It's a great movie. It's a great time. You're gonna have awesome time with it. Again, the humor's punched up. The characters are more fleshed out. The action set pieces are bigger. Especially the finale. It almost felt like they were having a Dragon Ball Z fight. But it's great. It's a great time. You're gonna have fun with it. Characters are awesome, and Baby Groot. So yeah, 4.5 out of 5 for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Alright, so if you made it this far, once again, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 if you saw it, and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys, and yeah, so that's it. Alright, for the second time, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Hopefully you guys have a safe, fun weekend, and as always, go watch some movies. Oh, and can we just mention? I know I just did all that, but can we just mention that the first scene we see all the Ravagers in? Did they really put that in a Disney movie? Like, I know it's Marvel Studios, and they say shit and bitch a lot in the movie, but did they really need to put a scene of what essentially kind of is? I mean, you know what it is, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about. That scene kind of, I don't know. I mean, it didn't feel. I don't know if I felt out of place. When I saw it, I was like, I can't believe they're gonna put that in a Disney movie. All right, I guess that's what they're gonna do. All right. Now I'm done. Bye, guys.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!